Okay, hello everyone. Today we start learning Retrofit library and how to fetch data from this library using this library. And the main goal is for your assignment and task 5 to use web service API and use some library to read from any source, like your own created or from online materials and etc. Of course, you have three options to use a retrofit, Unirest, IO, HTTP OK, or any other tool if you would like. But for our goal today, look into retrofit. And we show the Java example how to use it, retrofit library to fetch data from REST API. And when you start learning some different libraries, you always need read documentation first, the first place where you start to learn. And sometimes when you read some documentation, if you see that this documentation it's not for you and it's hard to understand how to use it, maybe better you choose different library. And Square, github.io, this company, which is have some good rating in nowadays, and this company creating open source tools and also have some libraries, and that for Android by default, just some Google recommendations to use Retrofit to use the REST API fetching. And if you're using the Java, you're also able to do this. And we look at some documentation here. And documentation is really simple, easy to understand, and how to use it. And here you see we have some Java interface, and later we move more details. Here it's how to use it. Here is how to use the service, like when you're calling and getting some response from the server. Here is how to use it. Get with parameters, with dynamic parameters. And you have more like post, put, you're able to edit headers, and this API using the annotations. And the main part of when you're programming, like in Java or if you're using the Android Studio, you also use some converters. If you're reading response and getting JSON, sometimes this format for you it's not really clear to understand how to read this JSON, and you need better to have like some library which helps to convert your JSON or any read it or fetch it data from the server to Java objects or Java lists or any structure. And here are some recommendations on which is this library have added already, like you're able to use the JSON, Jackson, Moshi, Protobuf, Wire, and that's it. And how to use it, it's really simple. You need to add single line to your dependencies, and later in the code you need to add converter factory, and this factory is automatically working. Of course, here is custom converters, but we don't use it here. And if you needed to use the retrofit in Maven, you need to add this dependency. And if you have the Gradle, you need to edit this dependency. And if you would like to use the converter, you need to use this line implementation in Gradle. If you have the Maven, you need to use the Maven central repository, Maven repository website, and try to find a link for Retrofit. And now we're moving in the slides, and when you look in some documentation, maybe we'll find more information here on the right side if you need it. And then we're moving to the next slide. And nowadays it's really our topic in everywhere, and the coronavirus, as you see. And today we also try to read some API using Rapid API website, and here it's also COVID-19 REST API. And here really doesn't matter which type of data we're reading, or NASA REST, or some weather, or I don't know, just some bank currency, or any other library. And when you have chosen some API, if you don't have any ideas how to find the APIs, the Rapid API is a place where you're able to find some APIs. And when you're running here, you will find some free public, or not public, you need to pay for some APIs, of course, because here is important data, and some gathering and try to sell it for you. And I don't know, it's really take long. We open this one. Okay, it's faster. And here you need to first register your account first. I know it's so long. Maybe when you're searching some APIs, there is some recommended APIs, etc. In a homepage, you will find more APIs. And Rapid API suggesting also to use SDK to add maybe more than one API if you would like. You're able to use using the Rapid API SDK, but for a moment we use concrete one API, coronavirus monitor. As you see here, it's free, and when you open any of the tool or API places, you will always find some requests, like HTTP requests. And here we have some get. If you have more other, like posts, put, delete, batch, etc. Those methods. And now we're moving back to the slides, and later we move here back here. And when you're picking some API first, for example, we picked that one API. And how to start write the code? Of course, we not able to write the code at the moment, because we don't know how this structure looks like, and which objects we need to create, and etc. Easiest way to use library, if you choose Java, HTTP, you're just able to copy, and that's it. Your task is done. But if you're using the Retrofit, which is not added here, we need to get some theory before we start. And let's see, and my recommendation is use, for example, JSON editor online. It's like to view some data. I delete for a moment. And if we pick this API, here we see project, host, API key. When you register it, it's everything fine. And when you're picking the method first, we're able to test endpoint. When you're clicking here, you get the response body here. And of course, I recommend to copy this, because sometimes you not able to understand which data structure is here, because you need to convert later to Java object. And how to do? You just pasting here the code and just press copy. And here you see we get the object. Here we get I don't know how to read it here. A bit to zoom in. Here you get your list, 168 items. And as you see, here is an item like a structure of object. And when you're creating the Java objects, you need to mimic the same structure. To have the object have two fields, array or list, and here I'm not sure which type of data, may be able to read as string here, because you have some times. Of course, here is maybe timestamp, but for our models, we able to use as a string maybe. And here you have some data, here is some data properties, and that's it. And now we have our structure of object. When we have some object in the Java, we need to add dependencies. First, we adding main library, like main library to fetch, and later we adding the converter. Here we're using the Google JSON. If you need more different one. If you're using the Maven, you pick the Maven repository. And now we start to create a project. File, new project. We pick the Gradle, Maven, doesn't matter. Here you're picking the version. For the retrofit, maybe you need, for the latest version, minimum 8+ version. I use Java 14. And when you have the Java 14 or any, here it's not a big deal. And here you need to pick the Java. Next. Now we need to create some group ID. It's namespace type Lt example. And here you need the API for project name. And we created retrofit. I don't know, live, not really live. Retrofit fetching data. Retrofit fetching data, it's our name for project, and we click finish. When you're clicking finish, your Gradle project will be done the job to create a project. Okay, apply. First we need to wait, and now we need to add those two libraries, like that one. And here we have test compile. Oh, sorry. And that one we picking implementation. Okay, click OK. If everything fine, in external libraries you will see some libraries added. Okay, HTTP, JSON, it's everything fine. And now it's a problem when you're running the Gradle, you will always see the deprecation message. To remove this message, you need to change this one, test compile, to test implementation. Oh, sorry. Because I don't know why its templates it's old, and maybe some developers didn't think at the moment to change this simple stuff, because they added by default when you're creating from template the deprecated names. And GUnit, for our goal, we don't need it. Maybe if you need it, maybe you just remove it. And here we just have maybe a central repository from where we download, and that's it. And here you have Java and resources files. Okay, now we added dependencies. When you added dependencies, you need to create a base URL address in your project. And how to create this? We first need to create a main class. Main. And here is a shortcut, public main. And when we're adding this, we need to create our constant, or doesn't matter, in here, or private, maybe there is some shortcut, private static final, here, private static final base URL is string, of course, and here you adding the base URL address. For our goal, we use this one address, because when you have some APIs, you always have the base URL address, and later you would like to add some methods like get methods or any, and choose the different path after this. Here it's like prefix for your calls, for your calls. And later you need to initialize your converter and builder. Just I copy this one lines, and if you adding, Alt Enter to import, and we use as a test, we're using as a test space here. I don't move from the main everything, just leave it as here as a testing purpose for the rest. And if you're creating your project, you need to create separate functions, like to retrofit creation, calling, and doing some stuff in the separate methods. Now I use this same window, easier for present how to use it, these functions. And here we're creating the builder. It's like creating the object of retrofit and adding base URL address, like to calling prefix HTTP calls, maybe calls prefix, and converter we use convert to Java objects. That's it, and you have here retrofit, build, etc. And now our goal to move forward and to see our structure. When you really know the structure, we see here, we know structure object, have two fields, array or list, doesn't matter, it's the same like linear data structure. And here it's some property, single property, like, I know, statistics taken at when stats is taken. And here we have the same stuff. Country stat, it's a name of this array, and country name Spain, country name Lithuania. Here it's array, and when you're creating the structure, you need to create like object inside array. Here it's stat and country name, and when you have some countries like list of stat, you need to create separate object. And inside this object, we have some list of stat objects. That's it. It's when you need to convert Java objects to JSON object, to JSON response to the Java object. And when you're using Retrofit, you need to create interface. And when you're creating interface, you don't need to add any implementation. You need to add only the methods, like HTTP call countries. When you reading or fetching data from the web server, you will get the response in that way. Call means response, returns countries object. When you have some converter, you convert to the Java object. And here are the headers. If you need to add some API keys, etc., you add some headers. Of course, sometimes you need some dynamic headers. Retrofit also suggests this feature, and you look in the documentation or some examples, you will find this how to do this. And here we taken from our from our example, like here. When you have code snippets, you will find here some example which headers you need to have here. Okay, now we need to create some API interface, model interface, and then the whole app looks like this. Here is the main. In the main, you're able to use base URL, retrofit, build, you calling the API, countries API, the interface, creating this object, and you're able to use HTTP method to get countries, to return objects of countries. And if you're using the main thread, you will always need to use call enqueue, because here is async calling, and in async calling you get two methods, like you should implement callback methods, like for error case and for response case. And if you're using the synchronous calling execute body, it's working the same, but it's blocking your main thread and you stuck. Or if you're displaying some info on graphical user interface, you get some freeze. But if you have some services like background thread, working in background thread, better to use execute instead enqueue. And there is method called enqueue in retrofit that performs the HTTP calls in background thread. No need to use the Java async tasks. And if you use execute, if you already have background thread, like in a service or any other place. Okay. Now we need to here is some constants. I'm adding some colors, because when you're printing the console, we need to see some result in nicer, add more stylish output, because when don't use it output to the graphical user interface, you need some colors. And to be able to add the colors only in the single way using the ANSI codes, like Unicodes here. And when you're starting, you need to finish. And later we use this stuff. Okay, here is a constants, and now we need to create our model for our API. We create a model package, and now we moving into that one, and we need to create object. Yeah, the name of object is really no matter which name we picking, because here it's countries, and when you create an object, it will be as a name better to represent that data object. Countries, maybe it's the best option, because here inside this object you will find the countries list, or just maybe you say that here is a data and later you have in the data countries list. Maybe we able to add data if you would like, or just countries. It's not a big deal. And when you're creating the countries, you need to add some data. Okay, we have country stat. And when you're reading the JSON, you always need to write the correct name. Private string, country stat. Why you need to add the same name? Because when you serializing the data from the web server, you need those names should match. If you need different names, you're able to add serialized name and add it like this. And here you're able to add like this if you'd like, to have some different names. But if you don't like, you're able to write concrete names without this annotations. Country stat is a list, list of country stats. Here is a statistics, yes. Object type is statistics. Statistics, if you'd like to create object statistics, yes. And now we need to create private string, and we also have different objects, statistics taken at. Statistics taken at, and you have created the basic model for the countries, and also you need to create the Java statistics. Okay, here we created. Alt enter. Import Java util, not AVT. And countries, statistics. And when you're serializing the data, you always need to have default constructor. By default, we have default constructor. The empty constructor. And also we need to create the getters. We don't change anything. We creating accessors or getters. And if you need mutators like setters, using the set method. And here we just, toString. It's not really important, but we are able to add also toString method here. And we're creating our countries model. Countries model like the same countries. Inside the countries we have the list and have some property. Okay, and here you're able to get the country stat and country get statistic taken at. now we need to fill our statistics object. Statistics object we need to create. If you don't know which type of data here, you need to look here. We see that our all data is on double quotes. That means here it's not a numbers. When you're parsing the data, you need to take the concrete type, because you get some fails or errors if you pick different types. And now we need to create a lot of fields, because our object have a lot of fields. But of course, you asking some, maybe you ask some questions. If I need a single property, is it possible to read a single property and create the statistics only with a country name? Of course, you can do like this. It's working correctly. If you need a single property from the response, able to pick only the single parameter, like only the country name. That's it. But of course, we're creating the full object, and now we just creating private string, country name, private string, cases. Maybe I add more private string. Of course, here it takes a lot. Sorry. Def, region. We don't need the region because it's empty. Total recovery rate, private string, new, private string, new cases, private string, serious critical. And we have more active cases. Of course, those type of objects really big because you have a lot of fields, and here you need to add more work to work with this. And now we have our object which we need to use in our program, in our app or application. Here we also creating the getters. Ctrl-Alt-L, we creating the getters, and also we need to add toString. We need to output some information, and maybe that's it for our implementation. If you're creating any constructor, like constructor with single field, you will always need to add it a constructor, empty constructor, like this. Public statistics, that one. Because once you serializing the data, you need always you will need always have the default constructor, empty constructor. Yeah, if you don't use it, it's by default using the default constructor. Okay, we have countries inside the statistics. Statistics is our list. And now our goal is to create, I know it's a service package or maybe service. And in service package, we're creating API. Our API is COVID-19. And as you see here, I also added here countries API. And here we're able to pick any name of API request fetching or service name, doesn't matter. Here it's COVID API. oh sorry, we need to create not class interface. And interface because the retrofit using this structure to use API, to use REST, read from the REST API. And here you need to add your all methods. For example, if you have some methods inside here, like get cases by country, affected countries, random asks, instructions, etc. And you need to create exactly the same functions. Name doesn't matter which type of name you choose. There is the call object, and when you're calling, you need to return some object or list. Doesn't matter which type data you're returning. That type data you need to return. Here we are returning object, as you see here. If you're returning the array, you need in the call section, in the call brackets, to return array or list inside here, like list and statistics. Yes. If you're returning the list of statistics, but at the moment we returning the countries, because we returning object. Here is object, as you see, the main root object. And the name of object really doesn't matter, and we use retrofit call. And here just able to get infected countries, any type of name. And of course, if you leave it like this, it's not working correctly. You need to add the method. Which type of method? Get. And Alt Enter. And when you're adding the get, of course, you need to add some path to fetch data. And batch, when we already created the base URL, you need to add the path to the resource. Path to the resource, we need to open the API, and here you will get on the right side, or just here, maybe I need to zoom it in a bit here. Cases mapped, country map, blah blah blah. Here you just coronavirus path. You will get this one. And you're adding this path here. And of course, if you're using the API, which is using also the headers, like maybe in Java, you see here URL address this one, and you have headers here. How to add these headers? You're able to add the headers annotation in that adding bracket as a array of headers, and here adding the header. And here we need to add like this, the first header, and able to add another header. Here and here you will get your key because you registered user. Of course, have some also maybe limitations, I'm not sure. And in every call you will send the headers with this request. And COVID API have only the single method. If you need to able to add more methods here. Okay, now we have the service, we have the model, and Now our goal is to read this data. And what we need to do more, we need to create a countries API, Retrofit create, and to return some call object, and to use the callback. First, we creating the object. Initializing the Retrofit object or service, we using the COVID API. COVID API equals Retrofit create. Maybe there is some documentation. Well, define relative method, obtain dynamic method parameters. Sorry, it's a lot of information. Maybe here it's some initializing of your when you fetching data, you need to initialize which type of data you reading, because in your web service or service you implemented here it's countries, yeah, and you need to initialize this object for returning countries. And here we just enter our service class. So reflection. And in our COVID API, we need to create a call object, because we have a single method, the get method, and if you have some parameters, dynamic, if you passing some parameters, you need to pass from the console or input from anywhere, you also need to pass parameters. But if method without parameters, you need only just initialize object. And this object created from the countries model, Retrofit 2, and here we have some call. Call means HTTP get call or fetch data. And here we adding COVID API get infected countries. As you see, this method, this method returns call countries, as you see here. That one. Call countries get infected countries, because we created a call. And if you have some parameters, you're able to pass some parameters. If they get or post or any method, you need to pass some parameters. And now we need to call. If using like this, call execute body. Add throws. Okay, let's try to do like this, and maybe we try to system out countries. I'm not sure if we added it to string, we see some information. Run the project. Okay. Okay, we get countries and we get some data. It's really similar to the JSON, because here the toString, as you see, a lot of countries. Everything working, yeah. Here is a basic, but here is a blocking your main thread. And if your application working with UI and you're blocking, it's not good practice. Better to use the call enqueue in the background, or async calling, and you need to create callback. And here, as you see, create on response on failure. And here by default you need to check if response is successful, we doing something else, I don't know, just system out problems with response. Yes, and of course on failure, if response fail, we're able to just print message. We're printing some message from which type of fail we'll throw it here. Okay, now if response successful, you're able to create your own output here. I'm just trying, oh sorry, we need to write some logic first. Okay, now we just creating maybe scanner, because the list is really huge, and when you have some huge list, it's not easy to read it from the console. Scanner, new scanner. System in. We're reading from the console. Now we're creating string as a country name. Country name. Or country name is equal scanner next. Because we're reading the string. And we need to system out, enter your country in English language. Maybe like this, yes. Maybe here better, and country name. Now we need to read it our list for. We're reading the not country, maybe statistics stat, and on the right side of the loop we calling response dot body and dot get countries stat, because we need a list of the read it object. We need to add for that one, and as you see here you will get assert response or object not, because here you're able to get a null, but if you will get a response or just I don't know which one is better. Assert response body not null. It's the same stuff. I don't know, it's really good right here, because response successful. Of course, if response successful, that doesn't mean that the response body is not null. Yes, and if not null, you're able to read it. Okay, now we're reading the statistics and response body and get country stat. And here we would like to display some information. We able first to output statistic taken at, or no, sorry, just we writing like this, latest update. And here we add some time. And how to get to the time? We need to read response, body, and get statistics taken at. And we just closing our this output. Okay, I close this one. And at the moment we have system out print line, response body, statistics taken at. And now we just printing response body get stats. And we scanning first your country, and if stat get country name equal maybe to uppercase equals country name to uppercase, because we need the same results. It doesn't matter is upper or not uppercase. If stat get country etc. Remove statement. No, I don't want it. If stat get country name to uppercase equals country name to uppercase. Okay, we just need to print our info. And maybe we printing stat dot get name, get active cases, yes. Okay, we just try to print it out. Enter country, Lithuania, 25. And this statistics, of course, in this API, I think that it's not really correctly shows, because here it's 822.3. In our I know in our hospital information maybe a bit different, because now it's not 25, maybe it's more. But to get API for free with real or live data, it's really hard to find it at the moment. And in the Rapid API, it's suggesting only this information here. Okay, we would like to output more. And how to output more? We able to create some colors. Let's see, ANSI, red, green, black, and more. And okay, the first we printing our country, and we printing some information. And of course, active cases. And here we add some colors. ANSI, active cases, maybe it's yellow, we saw in some stream. And of course, when you have ANSI, you need to reset to default color, and later we need to print it out more. Def plus ANSI color red plus that get def plus ANSI reset. And now we printing more active cases, def recovery, red, recover it maybe, plus ANSI green, plus stat get total recovered, plus ANSI reset. Every time you need to add this. And Now we need maybe the country name, of course. Country name. Country name, maybe add stats get country name. Just adding also the colors, NC, purple, blue, and C reset. Okay, we have some output, and we need to add some line after this, like this. And we have some name. We have name, active cases, def recovered, and maybe that's it. Okay, first we printing out and see result. Okay, we have latest update, Lithuania, active cases 25, def 0, recovered 1. Now we would like to print it more. To print it more, I'm not creating other method to be able to move it out and create other methods if you need it. I'm just creating the printing here. Just copying hard coding. And here maybe we create the scanner. Also scanner here. And when you finish working with scanner, I forget to say you need always the close scanner, like it's input. And here it's not country name, it's how many records, how many country, how many top countries display. Scanner next end, maybe, yes. Oh, sorry, not string, it's end. How many top countries display? And you reading here, we need to enter how many top infected countries display. And of course, we're able to have different method, different sorting, or doesn't matter which type of algorithm. Here it's only for demonstration purpose to show how you're able to use your response. And here you calling response here, and that's it. How many top countries display, scanner next end. Okay, and now we need to, when we're reading here, we need to add more, we need to change the if statement. If, and of course we need some counter, because we use not indexed, and counter, sorry, 0. And here after the printing we need to counter plus plus, because we need to add more 1 to the counter. And if counter is less than how many top countries display, then we printing out these countries. And we always display our country, like maybe we just writing here our country cases, our country cases, and then you get the different lists like system out, world, countries, cases. That's it. Okay, now we have some console colors. Creating the enter your name, Lithuania. As you see, latest update 8030. Our country cases. Enter how many countries to display for. And you will get China, Italy, Ireland, Spain. And our REST API working like we intended to use the retrofit. And retrofit, it's really easier to use. Only you need to know that you need to create the correct models to serializing and to create the service method to get some correct data. The best way is to see like here, or some API shows or shows by default that structure, because here it's object and list. We know how to create. And later you need only to have base URL address. Here, the builder, converter factory, retrofit object, then you service object initialize, and you just returning the fetch object. Fetch object is a countries object, and then you call like call it means like you mimic the request of HTTP fetching. And when you're fetching data, you're able to work with response body. But the main, if you have async calls, you're not able to pass this response outside this calling queue, because you will get some zero, or it's not initialized, or it's null, or doesn't matter which is result you will get. You will always need to execute your code inside the onResponse method in this callback function. And if you need to be able to use some methods inside, maybe better, but you're not able to move it out this data. Of course, you're able to call the method and to save to database maybe, and later to use in your UI if you need it. And of course, here it's your choice what you do with this data, with this call back. And for our API, maybe we don't add it more this methods, because here it's maybe it's better to use for your own tests, for practice. Use the same API to add more methods. Like here it's different, only the path, as you see here. That's these small cases, you different path adding here. It's like you appending here more methods like call, and you need of course to see which type of object. Here it's for you. And now I have prepared another example when you using OAuth technique, when you need to get some tokens, and when you get some token, you need to pass this token through the API. Of course, you need two calls, because first is to get the tokens and another for display data. For that example, that's it. We're moving to the next example, but here it's only overview of Retrofit library, which type of projects you're able to create. And here we have Blizzard API. Blizzard API. If you need a free API to be able to use the GitHub maybe to display repositories or another, just try to test different APIs. Okay, here as I see Blizzard API, maybe here. Oh, Blizzard API. Here's developer site. Of course, it's from the game. Oh, it's not logged in. Sorry. Then API access. Is it automatically stored some information, or I need to enter some info? I'm not sure now. Oh, it's working. Okay. Of course, first you need to create a client. Doesn't matter which type of APIs you will have, you need to create a client. Here, when you're creating the client, you always will get your client info. For every, I don't know, different APIs, doesn't matter, here is a gaming API, you will get client ID, you will get the secret. I didn't show the secret at the moment, but here is the same characters. Because here is the limits, and here it's client name, redirect URL address. Here it's when you sign in using the OAuth authorization, you're able to redirect to some page. In Java, at the moment, it's not the best place to display how to redirect a page, because in the client application for the web, it's better to use redirect. In our case, we don't use it to redirect URL address. And here is some documentation. Getting started. Oh. And here it's some game data API. Here it shows how to use it, query parameters, and etc. I don't know which one I use it. Maybe I use it that one, game data API. Yeah. And here, as you see, also there is some APIs, data season, ID, etc. Path. And here is a base URL address. Okay, for that API, I created the methods. As you see, there is no difference between those, the example before, but we need to authenticate our user to get our client, our created client. Using the client ID and client secret, we need to generate the access token, because when you're reading some information from this server, you need to send also the access token. And here, as you see, we post auth token. Here's a path, and to get access token, we need to create the access token. Field client ID, client secret, grant type. We have 3 fields. Using the documentation was written like how to use this, how to get access token. We need to have post method instead of get, and we need post 3 fields. And when you're posting, we're returning the token. And when we're getting the token, we're able to call the get method. And in get method, we need to return list of item type, query local to choose local, and we need to pass query access token. First we're getting token, later we're passing a token here. Now we're creating access token. Access token object looks like this. Access token string, token type, expire soon, scope. That's it. Item type is equals item type ID, name, path, A. Sorry, maybe this A is wrong here. Doesn't matter, we're able to delete here. You're able to create more. Maybe I would like to find this API. Item type. Maybe it's that one. Or not that one. Okay, we just move to Blizzard repository and try to copy client ID. And client secret. What? Okay, we need to authenticate. Prove. Okay, here as you see, a request URL address. When you making this API, you're getting ID, name, path, as you see, object, yes. And in our goal, in Blizzard API, when you creating this, when you're getting the token, later you're calling, this call means like the same as this. We're getting base URL address, we're getting path, as you see here, and locale n is query parameter here, as you see here, locale, and access token is here, another query parameter with and symbol here. Okay, we have token and this one. Now we move to our Blizzard repository. I know I call it like this because we're reading some data from, fetching data from server. We have client ID, client secret. You will always can hide in some file if you need it. Redirect URL, at the moment we don't use it. We use base URL. We use Diablo 3 base URL, API URL. We have grant type client credentials. We have token. We have two methods: generate access token, and when we generating the access token, we get item types and display it. Okay, now we look into our token generation. As always, we're creating the same. The flow is the same for all callings. We're creating the object. We passing base URL address. We convert object response to the object. Create object. Here is initialization of our retrofit object. Later we initialize our Blizzard API service, and we make a calling here. Call, as you see, access token, because we returning access token object. And get access token methods, as you see, before we doesn't have any parameters. Now we have query parameters. Or if we're using the post method, we have the field parameters, because we're passing in inside the header. The post method is in HTTP working different. Instead of query in the browser, as you see, we posting using the field. And you passing parameters through the post method. Client ID, client secret, client type. Yes. And when we're using the sync. And you will get the freeze if you use the UI. If using the for our case, it's really not a big deal with freeze. I don't see any problems. Less code, it's easier to read it. But you're able to use instead execute, use enqueue. But if you use enqueue and here is the async callings, you will get maybe sometimes some anomalies, because first maybe execute first method maybe will be called not if you're calling async, it will be like this, like access token, and you have some API items call. And if you're calling async, maybe the first calls finish this function, then access token will be null, and you will get some problems. I, for that reason, added synchronous, and before we finish, we should always finish access token, and then the call another, doesn't matter when the finish token, doesn't matter when we call this async API items. Of course, it will be some delay at the moment, but for this goal you need to use maybe some different threads and use the synchronous calling. It's like similar to JavaScript features or promises. Java features have, or in JavaScript is promises. Able to call inside one calling, able to call another calling if you would like. But here it's not a problem at the moment. We just calling the method and returning the access token. And when we getting the token, we adding this token to our token string. As I said before, when you have async, like using enqueue, maybe it's wrong, I don't know. Later enqueue like this. Oh, sorry here. If using enqueue, you will get async calling, and sometimes the token will be null or empty. For that problem, I've just picked the easiest way to use the not async, use the synchronous call, and you will always get normal normal results or returning token. Okay, when we generating the token set to token parameter string, as you see here, we call it, close maybe here, int secret rand type, returning the token. And when token is returned, we creating another call, like using dablet3 base URL, because we have two different calls, one from the main Blizzard page and another from the API page, because we need API data. We use the same object, same initialization, Blizzard API, but we're using different method, using locale and token which we'll get from the another object, and here we use enqueue. And here we just for item type it, object requires not null, response body, and here we just printed object from the call. Like as before, we get some response and we just parsing as item type, and when you have item type, we able to read it as it, for the moment, item type object. And when we running this project, I don't know if it's working or not. And then check it a few days. Okay, it's working. As you see, we get toString method, and here it's item type, id close monk, name close, path item type. Because here you will get more paths, and when you're reading some data, you're able to pass this to the path and to get another information and etc. And those response readings, it's more for client applications. Of course, you may be able to prepare as a backend implementation, because when you have some server, you're able to maybe call once and save to your database, and later to use any amount of time this data, because here it's only, I don't know, it's have some I don't know, 10,000 calls maximum limit for this API, or more. And if you need more and you have a lot of users, better to create your own, like you just calling once, saving information to your database, and maybe make some job which is updating this database every, maybe one day, every week, or every month, doesn't matter, and calling only once and using your own database and use this data. And of course, if you need more methods, you need to add more methods here and more functionality. And here, when you're reading, you're able to do anything. If you're able to system out print line here, you're able to do any function here, like your algorithm. And for today, maybe that's it. And thank you for your attention. And see you next week.